The wind screamed across Oak Island, carrying with it the echo of centuries-old whispers. Rick Lagina stood on the edge of the dig site, his flashlight trembling in his grip as shadows crawled over the stones. For more than 200 years, this cursed island had devoured those who dared to seek its truth. But tonight, something was different. The ground itself seemed to breathe. From the depths below came a low rumble, like a heartbeat buried in the earth. Dust fell from the wooden beams, and the air turned cold, unnaturally cold. Rick's pulse quickened as he stepped closer to the newly uncovered doorway, sealed by time and silence. Legends spoke of gold, of relics, of the Templars' lost treasure. But what waited behind that stone door was older, darker. The carvings on the wall glistened with moisture, or was it blood? And as the final slab shifted with a deafening crack, the island exhaled, a sound that wasn't wind, but a warning. Before we step through that door, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on the bell, because what happens next will leave you speechless. 140 feet beneath the windswept ground, the drills hit something that didn't belong. It wasn't broken shale or cracked limestone. It was smooth, unnaturally smooth. A flawless slab, fitted so precisely it looked as if it had been placed there by design. The crew froze. Rick stepped forward, brushing away the damp soil with his gloved hands, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. What lay before them wasn't shaped by time or pressure. It was the mark of purpose. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed what every instinct had already whispered. Behind the slab stretched a rectangular hollow, an empty void where none should be. The monitor's glowing lines outlined a hidden cavity, waiting just beyond reach. Marty squinted at the readouts and muttered that it looked like a room. Rick quietly answered, "Not a room, a doorway." Analysis came fast. Traces of iron within the stone hinted at hinge fragments, metal forged, not formed. Even after centuries buried, the echo of a blacksmith's fire lingered. Rick's thoughts flashed to the stone triangle mystery discovered on the island in the 1800s, dismissed for generations as coincidence. But what if that triangle had been a marker, a compass pointing right here? The team exchanged silent looks, the same realization dawning on all of them. The so-called metaphorical door, described in old journals and legends, wasn't symbolic at all. It was real, an engineered gateway sealed by human hands, waiting for this moment to be found. The legends surrounding the island ran deeper than anyone had guessed. Long before European explorers arrived, Mi'kmaq oral traditions spoke of a sleeping gate buried within the island, sealed by the spirits of fire and water. Elders warned that anyone who disturbed it would awaken both fortune and curse. Rick couldn't shake those words. Now, standing before the threshold, the stories felt less like myth and more like memory. Ancient French journals from the 1600s mentioned it too, in faded ink and trembling script. A door of stone, sealed with oil and blood. Historians had long dismissed that line as folklore, but the slab before them matched the description exactly. Rick and Marty cross-checked their notes, linking everything to medieval practices where relics and forbidden treasures were hidden beneath fortified chapels, protected not by guards, but by symbols and stone. Could this island be the final resting place of such a secret? A sanctuary or archive of something sacred? The crew recalled generations of reports about ghostly lantern lights flickering across the swamp and pit. Warnings, perhaps, or guardians. Looking at the stone now, the truth felt undeniable. Those weren't hauntings. They were watchmen, shadows guarding the island's greatest secret. What struck deepest was the new understanding settling in. Oak Island hadn't just been booby-trapped. It had been consecrated, built with ceremony, combining faith, science, and secrecy into a single, lasting design. The proof was carved right into the slab. Concentric circles, star patterns, and crosses etched in careful repetition, too perfect to be random. Experts were called in, tracing each groove, and soon an astonishing link emerged. The markings weren't decoration. They formed a cipher, something like a mechanical code wheel, the kind the Knights Templar were said to use to guard their most protected vaults in the 11th to 13th centuries. Rick studied the alignment again and froze. The carvings matched the constellations of the night sky from the year 1307, the exact year the Templars were betrayed and hunted across Europe. Coincidence? Or a timestamp? A hidden message marking the moment their secret fled west. The resemblance to Scotland's Rosslyn Chapel was undeniable. Arches, stars, crosses, all arranged with the same geometric precision. History itself seemed to whisper across the ocean through these stones. Weeks of painstaking reconstruction brought the team to a breathtaking realization. The carvings weren't just meant to be read, they were functional. The slab was part of a mechanism, a primitive lock designed to open only through the right sequence. Not just a doorway, but a coded gateway buried beneath Oak Island for more than 7 centuries. And deciphering it was only the beginning. LiDAR scanning stripped away the mystery layer by layer, revealing the truth in digital light. The slab wasn't debris wedged by collapse. It was anchored into the bedrock by interlocking teeth, like gears in a clock. Every part fit perfectly. No skeptic could argue it now. This was deliberate architecture, an engineered masterpiece hidden under mud and seawater for 700 years. The scan revealed even more. Hinge points along the slab reinforced with a metal unlike anything native to Nova Scotia. Lab results showed an alloy identical to the kind forged by Iberian metalworkers in medieval Spain, a region where the Knights Templar thrived before their sudden fall. Marty, still skeptical, suggested maybe some later colonial engineer had buried something here long after the Templars vanished. But the data left no room for doubt. Radiocarbon dating of oak fragments from the support beams sealed behind the slab came back locked between 1290 and 1310, the exact decades when the order was forced into hiding. The numbers didn't bend. What stood before them wasn't colonial trickery or pirate handiwork. It was a medieval gate, entombed centuries before Columbus ever glimpsed the New World. Hydraulic simulations estimated the slab's weight at more than 20 tons. By all logic, medieval builders shouldn't have been able to move something this massive with such precision. Yet here it was, crafted to defy water, gravity, and time itself. Rick ran his hand slowly over the ancient carvings, his voice steady but charged with awe. This wasn't a trap. It was a door, concealed by design, built with purpose, and waiting for its moment in history to be found. Then came the test. The drills bit into the slab's edge, and tension electrified the air. A sudden hiss erupted, compressed air exploding outward like the final breath of a buried giant. The chamber behind had been sealed so perfectly that its atmosphere had remained untouched for centuries. The escaping air was sharp and metallic, thick with the scent of pitch, cedar oil, and something darker. Gas sensors blinked red. Mercury vapor. The team froze. Historians knew the Templars had used mercury both to preserve sacred relics and to ward off intruders. The toxic signal hung in the air like a whisper from the past, a silent dare warning them to turn back before crossing the threshold. Rick steadied the team. His voice was steady, but beneath it ran the weight of centuries. Whatever waited beyond this point had been built to endure, not to be uncovered. He reminded them they were breaching something never meant to be disturbed, sealed by people who swore oaths stronger than life itself. The drillers pressed on. The slab groaned, its surface cracking in long, thin lines that crawled outward like veins of lightning. Dust swirled through the lamp's glow, mingling with stale air, until at last a piece of stone gave way. Through the narrow gap they saw it, blackness, deep and dense. Not emptiness, but presence. Something old and heavy was waiting. A splinter of oak beam was pulled from the opening, and testing dated it precisely between 1290 and 1310. The result aligned perfectly with the years when the Templars vanished from their European strongholds, their fleets gone, their records wiped from history. The connection was unmistakable. What had disappeared in Europe might have reappeared here, hidden beneath the soil of Oak Island. With a final push, the slab shifted free, sliding against its interlocking teeth, and the void yawned open. After hundreds of silent years, the gate had surrendered. Stepping through felt like crossing into another world. The air inside was suffocating. Torchlight spilled across walls so smooth they seemed polished, coated with a thin layer of lime plaster that shimmered faintly. It was an ancient waterproofing method once used around the Mediterranean, technique far beyond anything known in this region at that time. Whoever built this had fought the sea itself. The plaster bore faint red stains, solar discs, crescent moons, and a seven-pointed star glowing softly under the flicker of fire. Rick recognized the geometry instantly, the Seal of Solomon, a symbol of hidden wisdom and sacred guardianship. Timber scaffolding lined the tunnel, each beam fitted with precision joinery no colonial craftsman could have achieved. The mortise cuts and joints spoke of organization and skill, evidence of trained hands, not desperate diggers concealing stolen gold. Every mark hinted at intention. This wasn't a vault. It was a sanctuary, a monument built in darkness. Then came the scent, faint but unmistakable. Not decay or damp earth, but resin and incense clinging to the air. Tar and oil mixed with the sweet trace of something once burned in ceremony, as though the chamber itself had been blessed. The fragrance curled into the smoke, reminding them this was no mere tunnel. It was ritual space, sacred and sealed by design. As they moved deeper, the tunnel widened abruptly into a dome-shaped chamber. At once, they felt the acoustics. Each step, each whisper multiplied and circled back through the air. Even a breath became a chorus. The place was made to speak, to turn sound into reverence, to amplify prayer, oath, or chant. Rick lifted his lamp, and light swept over shallow alcoves carved into the walls. Each recess had once held meaning. Inside were fragments, corroded daggers, rusted chain links, pottery shards with traces of faded paint. Nothing complete, but nothing random. Offerings, tokens, echoes of a culture that had left its story buried in the dark. A deep groan echoed through the chamber, shaking dust loose from the dome above as part of the floor began to shift. Stone ground against stone, sliding backward, like a massive drawer revealing its hidden secret. Torchlight spilled into the gap, catching the edges of hand-carved steps that descended into darkness. The air changed, colder, sharper, like the earth itself was exhaling after centuries of holding its breath. Step by step, the crew moved downward, the narrow stairwell guiding them toward a smaller corridor that ended in something both awe-inspiring and ominous. Before them stood another barrier, a great door of oak, thickly clad in iron and sealed tight with pitch that still gleamed darkly after hundreds of years. Heavy crossbars braced its surface, part protection, part warning. This was no makeshift barricade. It was a fortress condensed into a single door. Yet the craftsmanship told an even deeper story. Each hinge bore a double cross insignia, the same emblem etched into Templar tombstones across France. It was their unmistakable mark of ownership and identity, carved here into the threshold of Oak Island's most secret chamber. The message was clear. The order had been here. Above the door, carved deep into the stone lintel, Latin words stood unyielding. Solus fidelis transit indignis. Only the faithful may pass. The unworthy shall perish. The inscription sent a chill through the group, but Rick's resolve did not waver. He reminded them that Oak Island was never just about gold or artifacts. Every clue, every chamber, every relic unearthed spoke of purpose. Not greed, but guardianship. This was about protecting something far greater than treasure, something that demanded devotion, secrecy, and sacrifice. Standing in that narrow stairwell before the ironbound gate, they understood they weren't simply breaking into a vault. They were crossing into the heart of a centuries-old vow. The door loomed like a trial of faith, its oak core sealed in silence for ages. Sparks flared as plasma cutters screamed to life, slicing through the crossbars one by one. The air filled with the acrid scent of burning metal, each cut breaking a stillness that had lasted for generations. Every strike sent vibrations trembling through the stone, as though the chamber itself resisted their advance. Finally, the last bar gave way with a wrenching shriek, crashing to the floor in a spray of ember-like sparks. Next came the pitch, thick, tar-black seams that had kept the door sealed for half a millennium. Heated blades bit into the resin, and with a sharp, echoing crack like bone snapping, the ancient seal broke. A surge of air rushed outward, not foul, but strangely pure, carrying the faint, unmistakable scent of cedar preserved through the centuries. It was the aroma of intention, proof that whatever lay beyond had been carefully protected from decay. The door groaned open, its hinges crying in protest, until the gap was wide enough for floodlights to pierce the darkness within. What the light revealed made every breath catch. The sight waiting beyond the threshold was nothing short of extraordinary. Inside, stone shelves had been carved directly into the chamber walls, precise, deliberate, and perfectly aligned. Upon them sat bronze and clay vessels, iron-bound chests, and reliquaries shaped like miniature sanctuaries. The arrangement was too intentional to be coincidence. This wasn't a hoard. It was an archive, a library of wealth carefully organized and hidden in plain sight. As the floodlights swept across the shelves, gold flashed from every corner, coins spilling from open containers, the edges of hammered ingots glinting, chalices gleaming in radiant arcs. The sheer abundance defied comprehension. Nothing was random. Every artifact had been placed with care, each piece catalogued by a hand that had vanished centuries ago. The crew stood frozen, stunned not only by the brilliance of what they saw, but by the magnitude of what it meant. Moving with reverence, they began their work, documenting what would soon be recognized as one of the most significant archaeological finds in recorded history. The first discoveries were reliquaries, golden containers encrusted with sapphires, rubies, and pearls, their surfaces etched with intricate filigree. These were vessels meant to hold the sacred. Bone fragments, relics of saints, perhaps even pieces of the true cross itself. Their presence confirmed the unthinkable. Oak Island had once served as a refuge for treasures smuggled away during the Templar suppression. Below them, rows of hammered gold ingots filled the lower shelves, each stamped not with English or Spanish seals, but with mint marks from medieval Portugal. The symbols dated from the 12th and 13th centuries, aligning precisely with the height of the Templar maritime empire. Individually, each bar was worth a fortune. Together, they represented an untold legacy. Nearby, sealed scroll tubes, still capped with wax, rested in weathered wooden crates. One had cracked open, revealing a glimpse of rolled parchment within. If the ink remained intact, they might contain Templar codices, secret ledgers, or internal charters long believed destroyed during the papal purge. The thought alone was staggering, proof that the Order's knowledge had crossed the Atlantic centuries before history recorded it. Stacked beside the crates were ceremonial swords with jeweled hilts, their pommels set with garnets and emeralds, and chalices of pure silver rimmed in green stone. These were not weapons or trophies. They were sacred regalia, designed for ritual, not war. Their presence confirmed what the chamber truly was, not a vault of commerce, but a treasury of faith. Every inch of the space reflected devotion, secrecy, and purpose. Preliminary estimates placed the collection's value at over $90 million, but such figures barely mattered. Its true worth lay beyond currency. These were relics of a lost Christendom, artifacts that united history and legend, proof that the Templar legacy had not vanished but endured, hidden beneath the soil of Oak Island, waiting for the faithful to find it. For historians, the chamber was nothing short of a revelation. For treasure hunters, it was the culmination of centuries of legend and obsession. But as scanning instruments swept across the surrounding stone, new readings began to appear, anomalies that hinted this was far from the final discovery. Behind one wall, the density readings shifted. There were voids beyond, sealed cavities untouched by time. Their size and pattern didn't suggest a small extension, but a network of adjoining vaults, perhaps an entire labyrinth of hidden chambers waiting in silence. Most striking of all was a second carved outline on the far wall. Unlike the oak and iron door they had breached, this one was immense, the stonework still crisp after centuries underground. It hinted at something on a scale far greater. A grand entrance leading to what might be a master archive, a repository of relics and knowledge too vast for any single vault to contain. Rick studied the markings, his eyes narrowing as he pieced the evidence together. His voice, steady but charged with awe, carried through the chamber. This was not treasure in the simple sense. It was an underground archive, a sanctuary built by exiled Templars to safeguard not only their wealth, but their wisdom, faith, and forbidden knowledge. What they had uncovered was likely only one fragment of a far-reaching network, mirrored in other hidden places across oceans, connected by secret voyages lost to recorded history. The realization was staggering. If Oak Island concealed not just gold, but truth, records of a suppressed order, then its significance stretched far beyond Nova Scotia. It would mean the island was part of a global lattice of secrecy, a buried library beneath the world's history itself. As the team prepared to leave the chamber, their footsteps echoed through the hollow dome, each sound multiplying into whispers that seemed to speak back through the centuries. The echoes felt less like noise and more like memory, a reminder that Oak Island never surrenders its secrets easily. It requires patience, endurance, and reverence. The vault they had opened wasn't the conclusion of a mystery. It was the prologue to a deeper one. And somewhere beyond those sealed walls lay the next chapter, a discovery that could reshape everything we know about medieval history, exploration, and the true reach of the Knights Templar, centuries before Columbus ever touched the New World.